The ballroom was alive with glittering chandeliers and voices that swelled like music in the air. Men in tailored suits raised their glasses while women in jeweled gowns drifted across polished floors. In the center of it all stood Adrian Cole, the billionaire host of the evening. His reputation filled every corner of the room, but his eyes were elsewhere. Near the far edge of the hall, where no one lingered, sat his daughter Clara. 12 years old, her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. A satin dress had been chosen for her, but she sat quiet in her chair, fingers folded in her lap. People passed her without pause. Some smiled politely, but most did not notice her at all, for Clara was deaf, and to them silence was uncomfortable. Every few moments her gaze searched the room, hoping for someone to stop, someone to see her. Yet laughter and conversation swept by as though she were invisible. Adrian glanced her way from across the hall, but duty and pride kept him rooted in his circle of guests. Clara's small shoulders sank lower with each passing moment. Then a young woman carrying a tray slipped through the crowd. She wore the plain black uniform of the waitstaff, her hair pulled back neatly, though a few strands had escaped. Her name was Emily, and unlike the others, she did not hurry past Clara. She paused, tray balanced on one hand, and studied the girl's lonely face. Clara looked up, startled. Emily's lips curved into a gentle smile. Slowly, carefully, she set down the tray on a nearby table and lifted her hands. Her fingers moved with practiced grace, spelling words in the language of silence. "Hello, Clara." The girl froze. Then her eyes widened, and for the first time all evening they lit with a spark of life. Her small hands rose hesitantly before she answered. "You know?" Sign. Emily nodded. "Yes, I learned it for my brother." Clara's lips parted in wonder. The room around them roared with laughter and clinking glasses, but in that small corner, time slowed. A bond formed, not of wealth or power, but of recognition. Clara laughed without sound, her eyes shining, as she signed again. "You are the first tonight." Emily glanced toward Adrian. He was still locked in talk with businessmen, his daughter forgotten at the edge of the hall. Emily's chest tightened at the sight. Then she turned back to Clara, her hands moving again. "You are not invisible?" "Not to me." Clara's fingers trembled as she spelled "thank you," her smile brighter than all the chandeliers above. And in that moment, Adrian looked across the room again. He saw his daughter laughing, saw her hands dancing in the air, and for the first time in years he felt the floor shift beneath him, as though something far greater than his fortune was unfolding in plain sight. Adrian excused himself from the men who hung on every word he said. They thought he was stepping away for a call, or perhaps to greet a guest, but his eyes were fixed on the far corner where his daughter's hands danced in the air. He had never seen Clara so alive, so bright. His chest tightened with something sharp, almost painful. Clara did not notice him approaching. She was too busy laughing silently with Emily. The waitress, Emily's hands moved quickly and gracefully as though she had been born to speak in the silent world Clara lived in. Clara responded just as fast, her eyes sparkling as she shared jokes and secrets in signs she rarely got to use with anyone outside her. Tutor's Adrian slowed his steps, suddenly unsure. He had bought art that covered museum walls. He had spoken to kings and presidents, yet he could not remember the last time he had truly spoken to his own daughter in a way that mattered. Now a stranger in a plain black uniform was doing it with ease. Emily caught sight of him. Then she straightened quickly, lowering her hands as though afraid she had overstepped. Clara followed her gaze and saw her father standing there, towering and unreadable. Her joy dimmed. She pulled her hands back into her lap, as though the light had been snuffed out. Adrian felt the sting of that silence more than anything. He crouched down, slowly bringing himself level with Clara's chair. For a moment he only looked at her, at the daughter who had grown quieter and quieter under his roof while he built an empire around her. He lifted his hands, clumsy, unsure. The motions were stiff, but he forced them into a shape he had learned long ago from one short, forgotten lesson. Hello, Clara's breath caught her eyes, widened. She had never seen him try, never seen him step into her world. Her hands trembled as she responded. "Hi, Dad." Adrian's throat tightened. The words were simple, yet they carried more weight than any business deal he had signed. He looked up at Emily. Her nervousness showed in the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, but her gaze held steady. "How do you know sign language?" he asked, his voice low, but not harsh. Emily clasped her hands in front of her. "My younger brother is deaf, sir. He never liked being left out, so I learned for him." She glanced at Clara again. "I guess." I saw the same look in her eyes. For a moment the ballroom faded, the chatter, the music, the crystal glasses, none of it mattered. Adrian nodded slowly, his jaw tight. "Thank you," he said simply, though his tone held something deeper. Clara tugged at his sleeve. Then her hands moved quickly. "Dad, can Emily stay?" Adrian looked at her, then at Emily. He saw hope in his daughter's eyes, a hope he had not seen in years. Emily shifted nervously, unsure if she was about to be dismissed or scolded. Adrian's lips curved into something rare and unfamiliar on his face. A genuine smile. "If Emily agrees, she can stay as long as you want." Clara clapped her hands together in silent delight, her eyes glistening. Emily blinked, caught off guard, but nodded. "Of course," she said softly, and just like that a single moment rewrote years of distance, a billionaire father, a lonely daughter, and a waitress who had spoken in the language that bridged a world of silence. But unseen in the corners of the ballroom, whispers had begun to stir. Not everyone welcomed the sight of a billionaire's heiress laughing with a waitress in front of powerful eyes. The whispers started small, like the faint crackle of fire on dry brush. A pair of women in glittering gowns leaned closer behind their jeweled fans, muttering about how shocking it was for the billionaire's daughter to be seen so openly attached to a waitress, a group of Adrians. Business rivals exchanged smirks, one of them chuckling under his breath about weakness showing itself in plain sight. Emily felt the air shift before she even heard the words. Years of working tables had given her a sharp instinct for tension, and now every laugh, every sideways glance felt like it carried her name in it. She kept her smile for Clara, steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she poured water into a glass. Nearby, Clara noticed, she touched Emily's wrist gently and signed, "Ah." "You okay?" Emily nodded, but Clara's sharp little eyes knew better. Adrian had been watching too, his jaw tightening as the smirks grew louder across the room. He had dealt with competitors in boardrooms, men who hid daggers behind polite words, but this was different. This was his daughter's joy being chipped away in public. Then one of the older executives, a man with silver hair and too much wine in his hand, raised his voice just enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "I suppose even billionaires must rely on the staff for entertainment when they cannot manage their own families." He laughed dryly, the kind of laugh that invited others to join. Several did nervously, their voices echoing in the high ceilings. Clara's face fell. She pulled her hands into her lap, shrinking smaller in her chair. Emily's chest burned with anger, but she stayed silent, biting her lip, until she tasted blood. She was just a waitress here, one word back, and she would lose her job, but before she could decide, Adrian rose slowly from his chair. The room hushed at once. His presence filled the space in a way no chandelier or orchestra ever could. He did not look at the man who had spoken first, but instead lowered himself beside his daughter. Again his hand resting gently on Clara's shoulder. In clear, deliberate sign language he spelled out 3 words for everyone to see. "She is mine." Clara's eyes welled with tears. Emily's breath caught. The crowd stared silent, some ashamed, some shocked. The man with silver hair turned red, his smirk collapsing under the weight of what he had just witnessed. Adrian finally looked at him now, his voice calm but sharp as steel. "You speak of family as if it is a weakness. That is why you will never understand strength." The night air was cooler outside the ballroom, yet the fire inside Adrian's chest only grew. He walked with Clara's hand in one palm and Emily's in the other, his stride firm as though he had just declared war on the very world he used to control. The valet rushed to bring his car, but Adrian waved him off instead, leading the 2 women toward the dark streets where no glittering lights or polished marble could follow. Emily finally spoke, her voice shaking. "You didn't have to do that. They will never forget what you did tonight. They will hate me for it." Adrian stopped, turning toward her, his eyes intense. "Let them hate you, let them hate me, but they will never look down on my daughter again. And they will never silence the one person who gave her voice." Clara squeezed Emily's hand, smiling through tears, her small fingers signing "thank you" again and again, as if she could not say it enough. They made their way to the car, and once the doors closed, silence wrapped around them. But a moment, Adrian let himself watch Emily in the dim glow of the dashboard light. The strength in her eyes, the way she carried Clara's heart so carefully. It struck him harder than any boardroom victory ever had. The following morning, the world erupted. Newspapers splashed pictures of the ballroom exit with headlines that screamed about the billionaire, the waitress, and his daughter. Social media split into chaos, some mocking him, others praising his boldness. Stockholders called, demanding explanations. Reporters gathered at the gates of his estate, cameras flashing like lightning. Adrian stood on the balcony overlooking the storm with a calmness he had not felt in years. Clara played with Emily in the garden below, laughing freely for the first time in public. It was then that he realized what mattered could not be measured in wealth, reputation, or silence, but in the sound of his daughter's laughter carried across the morning air. That afternoon, he called a press conference. Reporters packing into the hall, ready for blood. He stepped onto the stage, Clara at his side, Emily standing just behind, uncertain and nervous. Cameras clicked furiously. Adrian raised a hand and the noise fell away. He signed the first words slowly for Clara. Before he spoke them aloud for the world to hear, "This is my daughter, Clara. She is deaf, but she is not broken. She has more strength than every man who mocked her combined." He gestured to Emily, then his voice steady. "And this woman gave my daughter a voice when the rest of you looked away. For that she will have my respect, my trust, and my protection." The room went silent, the weight of his words sinking in like thunder rolling across plains. Then Clara lifted her small hands and signed clearly. "For the cameras, my dad is the bravest man I know." The moment spread like wildfire across every screen, every paper, every whispering corner of the city. But inside that hall, it was not about the world at all. It was about a father who finally broke. His silence, a daughter who finally stood tall, and a waitress who unknowingly stitched a broken family back together. And as the lights flashed, Adrian looked down at Clara, then at Emily, and for the first time he felt he was not carrying his empire. Alone he had something far stronger, a family.